Chamber of Commerce, and welcome so much. We're so excited to have you join us today on behalf of the St. Helena Chamber of Commerce and, of course, Pacific Union College. We're just so excited about this partnership, and we're excited to kick off Conversations in Leadership. This is a panel series covering an array of topics regarding leadership and innovation throughout Napa Valley, which is so exciting. That's what makes Napa Valley so special. Today, we're going to be discussing women in leadership, such a great topic. We're going to be talking with four very unique women who have made quite an impact here in Napa Valley, women who are strong leaders for the community and future innovations within our community, which is just so great. So without further ado, so excited to introduce you to the panel. But before we get to that, I would like to introduce you to the moderator of our Women in Leadership first series kicking off, and that is the Vice President of the Chamber, my right-hand man, Joaquin Arazo. So take it away, Joaquin.
Thank you, Amy. Very glad to be here with everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we're so excited for this panel, and even more excited to introduce everyone that we have joining us today. So without further ado, let's get started. First, we have Martina Costell. After graduating with a communications degree from Oregon State, Martina garnered a successful and award-winning career with domestic and international PR and advertising agencies. After which Martina moved to the Napa Valley to begin growing her own strategic consulting business with the opportunity to work with new clients in the region. When the restaurant at Meadowood and Christopher Costell were both in need of in-house consulting for their growing businesses, Martina agreed to come on board. Under Martina's leadership as Director of Communications, the team established the first brand partnership with Lexus Culinary Masters. And shortly thereafter, it grew to include Samsung, Le Creuset, American Express, Cadillac, and so many more. An incredible standalone talent, Martina can be occasionally found at the end of the Charter Oak Bar, laughing loudly and enjoying a martini. We also have Angelina Mondavi, winemaker and co-proprietor. Angelina just completed her 30th harvest, and with nearly a decade of working in dual hemispheres, Angelina recently launched her own company called A. Mondavi Consulting. Consulting as a winemaker, her portfolio includes Brasswood Cellars, Aloft and Dark Matter wines, and so many other labels as well. In addition to running her own personal business, Angelina currently carries the honor of serving as a director on the family's company board for C. Mondavi family, and a goal to continue the family legacy. Angelina attended Villanova University and majored in chemistry with a minor in business to create a well-rounded foundation for her future in the wine industry. We also have Michelle Novi, the Industry Relations and Regulatory Affairs Director for the Napa Valley Vintners. She oversees the organization's local and state advocacy efforts, sustaining initiatives, and community outreach endeavors. Michelle is a graduate of UC Davis and the Empire College of Law. She serves on the board of directors for both the Vine Trail and Napa Green. And last but not least, we have Laura Rombauer with us, a Napa Valley local for more than 25 years. Laura is the proprietor of Napa Valley Vintage Home, a Napa Valley lifestyle retail store that has been open for over 19 years with an emphasis on tabletop, entertaining, and interesting goods for the home. The shop has been a constant evolution, but Laura has always stayed true to her own personal style, taste, and vision. Laura is a graduate of the California College of Arts and UC Davis. I know I've spent a fair amount of dollars there too, like a lot of us probably watching. So as we begin, we are going to start with one question for everybody. And towards the end, if we have time, we invite you all to kind of put your questions in the chat as well. But let's have everybody start off. I'm going to have Michelle start off. What path did your career take that resulted in your current position? What passion, what drive led you to where you are today?
Thank you so much for the question, and thank you for the invitation to be on this panel. It's an honor to be featured with all of these other incredible women. My background, my career started at UC Davis and having an interest in environmental issues, and I focused on environmental studies and policy there. And right out of college, I felt very fortunate to be hired at an environmental consulting firm. Little did I know that I was signing up for some seriously boring work. And I quickly realized that a change was needed. I was living in Napa at the time and commuting to Walnut Creek. And when my firm was sold to a bigger firm in San Francisco, that commute became completely untenable. And so I did, I think, what you do when you're 24, and I just decided to change careers altogether. And I began working at a vineyard, winery, and ranch down in southern Napa, doing all sorts of things. On my first day, I remember seeing chickens being harvested and thought, okay, this is really a change of pace. But my time in the wine industry kind of allowed me to learn more about that business. And when a position opened up at the Napa Valley Vintners that combined my interest in environmental advocacy and policy work, but also the marketing and communication side of things, it was this perfect fit. And so I joined the Vintners in 2012 and have been with them ever since.
That's awesome. Let's go to Martina.
Hi, everyone. I'm so humbled and honored to be a part of this panel. It's very rare that I talk about myself. I'm so used to telling stories about products or our restaurants, or talking about chefs, specifically my husband, who is a chef. So this is new for me. So I appreciate you guys having me, and I'm thrilled to be here with these other amazing women today. Out of college, I had a communications degree. So as my parents like to say, I was a professional intern for a very long time. I either had too little or too much experience, as the story goes for most. And I finally landed at this wonderful PR and advertising shop called 4 Stories, with an amazing creative director who sort of took me under his wing and really saw my potential and empowered me to sort of just run with everything, any big idea I had, and I appreciated that. So from there, I got to work on a client called Tillamook Cheese. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's now is a national brand, but at the time it was just a little family-owned farm co-op in the Pacific Northwest, which is where I'm from. So I was fortunate because I loved the product growing up, which brought me to working in the consumer products industry, primarily with food and beverage products. I went over to another agency that focused on public affairs and wanted to grow their marketing communications practice. And so they brought me on, and Tillamook came with me. So I was able to grow that practice and expand on what we were doing with them, potentially, or specifically with partnerships. So through the advertising buys, we had a lot of added value partnerships with Food and Wine Magazine, Sunset. So we did a lot of culinary events. So we were looking for brand ambassadors, which sort of brought me to working with chefs and restaurants, and therefore became my love of the industry. I was sort of sold at that point. I was loving everyone in the industry. Everyone was so passionate about what they did, and I just couldn't get enough. So I've just found my way. Obviously I met my husband, who is a chef, and he convinced me to move out to Napa Valley. Didn't take a lot of convincing, although I did have the goal of becoming a partner of my PR firm by the time I was 30. Luckily, I was offered that, and I forgoed it to move out here to this beautiful place. And I've been able to continue my business. And obviously now it's turned into a family business. So I have 2 daughters. And so this panel today really sort of represents sort of where I've come in my journey, but also what I want to instill in them as they move forward into theirs too.
Thank you so much for sharing. Let's go to Laura.
Hello. Well, I have to say, I'm very fortunate in that I come from a multi-generational line of very strong and very creative women on both sides of my family. And I think I've been the beneficiary of all of their creative efforts and endeavors. And so growing up, I've always had a lot of exposure to a creative life. My mother is a retired chef, an avid antique collector. My grandfather on my father's side was a fashion designer in London. And it seems as though my whole life was very creative, whether it's from a food aspect, from a home environment, and things of that nature. And I knew that I was a creative person as a young person, and I loved to draw. I was interested in fine art, and I definitely entered college really not having a clear direction of what I wanted to do. And so I was at UC Davis, and I was a fine art major, French minor, and was there for a couple of years, and happened to take an architectural drafting class as an elective. And at the time, there was an environmental design major at UC Davis, but this was, it didn't have like an architectural program. And so I took this class, and it was a true epiphany for me. And I've never experienced so much joy in taking a class. And I had never had any experience in it before. And back then, I'm quite a bit older than everyone on this panel. It was like T-squares and mechanical pencils. So no computer aided drafting. So it was very old school. And I took this class, and I was so inspired by my professor. I even remember her name. And I got my first and only A+ in college. So it was a class that I did well in. I had a talent for it. And I happened to, that was in the spring quarter. And through a contact of my father, I was able to get an internship at a design architectural firm in San Francisco for the summer. And so I worked for Marquis Associates, which was a mid-sized architectural firm, and at the time was working on the major remodel of San Francisco International Airport, along with many other different projects. And so this internship, I just found my calling, and I found my niche, and I did really well. And we loved each other. And basically, when I was going back to Davis, heading back in the fall, they said, if you really want to continue in this industry, you need to change, you need to transfer. So I went back for fall semester, and then I transferred to California College of Arts and Crafts. I think it has a different name now, but it was based in Oakland, and they had an interior architecture program that was all conducted in San Francisco, actually in this old rehab warehouse. So I studied interior architecture, continued a little bit at Marquis Associates while I was in school, and then was able to, I got an internship at Gensler and Associates, which is one of the largest architectural firms, interior architectural firms in the world. And their world headquarters was in San Francisco. And I got an internship there and continued working for them while I was in school, and then ended up taking a full-time job. So, that's kind of where it all led. I had, no original idea that I'd be in interior design. Although all of my work at Gensler was commercial interior design. We worked for large corporate companies, McKinsey and Company, all sorts of law firms, lots of work at the big B of A building. And we were headquartered right in downtown San Francisco in the financial district. So I ended up working with them for 5 years on a whole variety of projects. And one of my projects was redoing the executive floor, including a lot of custom furniture for Del Monte Foods, which was headquartered in downtown San Francisco. And I completed that project. It was a big project. And then I was offered a job by my client to come in-house to lead a 5-year project of reinventing all of the workstation office standards for the company. So that took 5 years. And I was pretty burnt out. I worked really hard. There was a lot of all-nighters and sleeping on the sofa in the lobby. And, I've always been a really hard worker. And I decided I was going to take a break and come up for the Napa Valley for about a year because my family was up here. And with full intention of going back, but I never left. And the rest is history.
Thank you for sharing. Angelina.
Yeah, I grew up in the industry here in St. Helena, born and raised. I'm 4th generation of Charles Creek Winery. And I was kind of brought up I was the oldest grandchild, but I was also the female. And then subsequently after that, my grandfather didn't have a grandson until five of us were born already, all girls. So needless to say, my grandfather's tune to women kind of completely changed avenue because, he had 2 sons and then all of a sudden to only have granddaughters for so long, his tune really changed actually quite dramatically in the sense that he realized, he's giving away his entire company to basically all women and 1 boy for the company before he passed. So for us, it was important for my family. Part of the discussion was that we all had to work at the winery starting at the age of 10. I got 25 cents an hour. I can tell you my sister, who's 10 years younger, made it to $5.25 an hour when she first started. So it's very funny when you actually look at the grand scheme of things, 10 years difference, 2 totally different generation millennials. And I really fell in love. My passion was being in the lab and running titrations and the chemistry background. And that's really where my science for me was always really cool. So I immediately kind of avenued that path and realized that I wanted to really do that in college. So that's how I ended up with a chemistry degree with a minor in business in college. Making sure that I could actually, balance my checkbook and also understand how to run a business successfully without having my grandfather or my dad or my mom kind of telling me what to do. And I eventually ended up getting my master's degree in Adelaide, South Australia. So way farther away from where my family donated all their money to Davis. I refused to go to any school that had monetary terms and my last name on a building. It just didn't seem fair and it didn't make a lot of sense for me because I think people would have thought it was just handed to me. And that's not how I really work. And I traveled around the world kind of making wine and doing multiple harvests a year. And I did that for a very long time until about 6 years ago. I kind of had a come to Jesus moment. I had a lot going on in my life and I was kind of done living out of the suitcase, traveling to the Southern Hemisphere, doing harvest, then hopscotching around the world and bottling and then coming home. It's very exhausting to a certain point. So at 33, I basically stopped what I was doing and left my position with where I was working and started my consulting career. And the rest is really kind of history. My sisters and I actually own our own brands together. So called Novi Sisters Collection, and we're very, very active with that. Now have 4 wines in our SKU and our lineup. But for us, obviously with all women, it's really important for us to kind of give back to the community and also kind of talk about some of the things that we've kind of learned. The wine industry is going through a bit of a come to Jesus moment, I want to say. I'm really excited about where the future actually is is going and where it's headed, because it's been male dominated for such a long time. But I can tell you some of my sister's generations now coming in, it's basically all females, and hardly any males are actually going in. So it's really exciting to see the transition being made.
Great, thank you. So kind of highlighting a lot of the conversations, thank you for sharing that first part. And just to let folks know that if something sparks you, write that question in the chat. And if we have time again at the end, we'll get to those, but we don't want you to lose your train of thought. Go ahead and put that question in now. But for the panelists, and I want to direct this really to Michelle. Actually, let's do it to Laura first. But early in your career, working, all those nights, and really kind of honing in on the piece, what do you wish you knew more about early on in your career, or maybe additional training that you could have had that really would have maybe focused and helped you, kind of go further earlier on, or what people might want to know if they're interested in that now too?
Well, my circumstance was, I really at the time, I really needed to be working. It was very important that while I was going to school, that I also have, an income to be able to enjoy myself, especially in San Francisco. So I would have loved the opportunity to not have the pressure to finish school and get out there in the work world. I would have loved to had a dual degree in like art history. And I also am a firm believer in travel. And, at the time, I wasn't in a position to do a whole lot of travel, and giving the, sort of the visual component of what I was interested in, I think that really would have been a great opportunity. And just, I consider myself a pretty well-traveled person, but the majority of it has come later in life. And I think that is an extraordinary classroom. And I know we have a lot of young viewers right now on this panel. And I would say that I really wish I had the opportunity to travel more and see other cultures and other countries when I was a younger person. I think that would have enriched my whole career path even more than what I was able to create for myself. And it's the traveling and meeting other people and experiencing other cultures is an extraordinary classroom, and I feel almost even more meaningful than a college experience.
Thank you. Martina, I'm actually going to pose a similar question to you in terms of that actually the same question, and going from working for firms and working for yourself and really connecting with all these brands. What's kind of that idea of what you would have wished you'd known earlier?
Oh, so much, Joaquin, so much. So, I too, I was a first generation college graduate. So I felt like I had no idea what I was doing. I knew I wanted to leave home and I wanted to experience the world. I didn't know what that was necessarily at the time. And I too had to work very hard to have the means to go to college, which is why I chose a state school. And I had to have 3 jobs, including an internship and all my extracurriculars, just to get through college and to pay for it myself without any student loans. So for me, I've always had the work ethic. I've always been a strong person, and knowing I wanted more. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to do all these things. I didn't know what all these things were either at the time. I just knew there was something bigger out there. So really, it's embracing the time you have in college. I think I was in such a hurry to get to the next stage, to find out what that bigger world was, when really, if I probably, all the time I'm like, oh, I could have been an educator. I would have been a really good teacher. Oh, I would have really enjoyed psychology. There's all these things now, as you go through life, that you wish you could go back and take a moment, think about it, like you could do so many things. I think so many people can do anything they want with their life. It's just this sort of moment of like, I have to make a decision now. And I think when you're in school, especially the students that are watching, like embrace the moment that you're in school, embrace the education, the time you have there. It's a time to like discover not just yourself, but all the things that are being offered to you, all the resources that are being offered to you. And I don't think that I probably took advantage of that as much as I could have. I think I figured it all out because, as I said, I'm a strong person. I'm a very hard worker. But you know, there was a period of time where I'm like, I kind of want to go back to school. So I have that same feeling, Laura, where I was like, I felt like I could have done a little bit more schooling. I wish I would have traveled when I was younger. I've had the opportunity now to travel all over the world, but you know, there's things where when you're younger, I just wish I could turn back time. I'm getting old. I'm feeling like, you know, you get to a point, you know, where you're like, okay, I wish I would have just done a few more things in that moment. And so trying not to rush ahead and trying to really embrace the moment you're in that part of your life, because we all are growing, we're all continuing to grow. And I think self-reflection is the most important part of the journey. So.
I love that. Thank you. Before we kind of move on to that next question, Angelina or Michelle, is there any kind of thing that you would want to add to that kind of topic of what you wish you knew or anything like that?
Sure. I think for me, it wasn't until I started really traveling the world and really kind of, I was getting forced to be out of my comfort zone, working with cultures that are a little bit more male dominated and having to really, you know, at 24 years old, I'm in another country and I'm, you know, one of the bosses, but I'm also 5'1" and I'm a girl. And it put me in, I was put in a realm that I wasn't mentally ready for, but in hindsight, it was probably the best thing that ever could have happened to me, was getting put into uncomfortable positions, but also out of my comfort zone, which allowed me to actually really blossom, but it also allowed me to tackle when there's a situation. I don't have a panic moment of being like, what am I going to do? The question is, how can I solve this issue? And it really pivoted my mindset of I don't have someone to rely on. I have to figure out how to solve that solution without any help. And I think that was one of the huge things that I think, you know, in hindsight, kind of going back, was like, wow, I wish I had actually been a little bit younger and thrown into the gauntlet a little bit more and having that baptism by fire, because I really learned how to manage crises extremely well. For me, you know, between the fires, I've now been, I've done 7 harvests with fires, not just here in the US. So, and I've dealt with 5 earthquakes, major earthquakes, down in Argentina. And between Argentina and Australia. So for me, during harvest, I have these crises modes. My dad laughs at me because he goes, "You are the most Zen person ever." And he goes, "And you just go into survival mode. You don't ask any questions." He goes, "You just do it." And he goes, "And it's very," he goes, "I couldn't have told you." He goes, "15 years ago, you would have never been that way. I would have been a chicken with my head cut off trying to figure out, you know, what I do." And now he's like, "I just sit back and I watch." And he goes, "And it's so cool to see you just kind of figure it out and not look back, and you make the decision, you make a decisive, and you don't," he's like, as he said, "I don't regret the decisions that I make. It's like, these are the decisions and I stand by them, and these are the reasons why." And he said, when you start doing that, your life perception just kind of changes a little bit more, but the ease and the easeability of figuring certain things out that can be very catastrophic, you know, in the moment of time, and not sure, you know, I wasn't even sure if my house was still standing at that time, but the only thing I really wanted to care about was, you know, are our employees safe? Is everyone okay? Are the wineries standing? What are the wines looking like? Okay, let's focus on that. I'll deal with my house later. My dad's just like, "I don't know how you do it," but we do. And I think that that's one of the things, forcing yourself outside of those comfort zones when you're a little bit younger, I think helps you develop and blossom into who you are now.
I'll be really brief, but I'll just add that if I was speaking to my younger self, I would tell her that she doesn't have to have it all figured out at 19, 20, 21, 22, or even 30, that you have time to try different things, dabble in different things. It's okay to not be perfect at everything, and that's how you learn what you're actually good at. To notice what you're good at. So if that's writing, keep writing and try to get better at it. If it's speaking to an audience, find your voice. And lastly, to be brave. This is the time to try new things and put yourself in those situations that are outside of your comfort zone, because you really do grow. And if anyone starts to underestimate you, well, good luck to them, and be sure to speak up for yourself.
Thank you all for sharing. Angelina, when we talk about, kind of the wine industry and it being male dominated for so long, was there anything, with that or beyond that or alongside that maybe surprised you most about starting out in your industry too?
Oh, that's a really great question. I mean, I grew up in the industry, so I grew up running around the winery, in the 80s, and finding, pinups, in the cellar office, and all that sort of stuff. And one of the things that my grandfather always said is, you have to grow a thick skin. And at that point, it really was all men. It was my grandfather, it was my dad, it was my uncle, it was my great uncle. I mean, you really look at what, in the 80s and the 90s, it's truly was majority men. Nowadays, yes, I've grown a way thicker skin. I've heard comments, and, every now and then I hear comments, and you just kind of learn to I let it roll off my back, and I don't let it affect me, because at the end of the day, one of the things that I think was most important for me was being like, it's not affecting my job, and I need to focus with my job at hand. And if I get distracted because someone's making a comment because they're not willing to be accepting of me being a female in their workforce, they've got the issue. It's not me. So I've really kind of set myself up in the sense of, this is my job at hand. This is what I want to attain. And I just let some of that other fluff that kind of happens go by the wayside. I've worked in almost every country that's male dominated, and every place has been a little bit different. But by the end, I've really, I've built amazing relationships, but I've also helped educate them on, not all women are bad, but we can all work together, and we can work cohesively together to attain the goal that we set out to achieve. And I think that was huge for, at least I know in Argentina, it was a huge moment when I could sit in a room with all 7 of the boys and have a conversation with them, and whether or not they liked me as a female, that didn't matter to me. What mattered was, this is the job at hand. This is what I was sent to do, and we're going to accomplish it. And this is how we're going to accomplish it. And it worked. And I think that that's something that's, that's really huge, but it's also, it's shocking, at times too. But I have to say, we've moved a considerable way. I mean, some of the facilities that I work at now, it's run by all women. So we're changing tides to the point that I think, it's starting to become recognizable, and it's becoming more apparent. And I think it's really exciting to actually see that as well.
Great, thank you for that. Martina, I'm going to actually ask you, in terms of working in that PR and advertising, and then kind of doing that with the food and beverage industry, and what maybe similarities and maybe even surprises as well, kind of comparing the both, or even overlapping, kind of has guided you, or kind of giving you mental awareness to what the industry is about?
about like how it's giving me, how my background in marketing gave me.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and what surprised you most about those industries, or what you've kind of learned to even embrace on the other hand of that too?
It's definitely, they're both filled with creative people, and creative people are very passionate, and passionate people sometimes are very opinionated. But I think that, you know, it's having your voice, it's taking a seat at the table, you know, like Michelle said, having a voice. And I think even at a young age, that was something that I definitely had to grow into. I had to grow a thicker skin over the years as I've sort of worked in different situations. I think I did, you know, at times have to like put things aside and realize, like, don't look at it from an emotional standpoint. This is not affecting, you know, the work that I need to do. I need to just let that go, because, you know, I think, you know, on the PR and marketing side, it tends to be very female heavy. So we have, you know, in that area, there is always like, I'm around my peers and we're lifting each other up. And then I also was in an environment where I'm working in an advertising PR setting, and at times the advertising side was more male heavy, and maybe some inappropriate, you know, comments or things, you know, things that I just had to sort of let go and know that, you know, I have something important to say. I'm going to say it, and we'll move on to the next topic. Again, I think things have changed so much. I think the last few years is a really great example of how, you know, how people can communicate better, how people can be more respectful, and how inclusion is going to change the world as we move forward. So not just male, female, but all inclusion of people of different races, sexual orientations, what have you. You know, I think that every industry is really making big strides. I'd say the restaurant industry is making big strides. I know that we feel very strongly about all of it. So for us, inclusion in all of our businesses is very, very important. So I'm excited for what the future has to bring. And, you know, I think that, you know, back then it was a lot harder at times, but also it made me stronger. And, you know, as Angelina said, we're growing thicker skin every single day. But, you know, I think the landscape is going to look completely different. And, you know, like I said, I'm excited, not just for me, but having 2 daughters, I'm excited for what it's going to look like for them. It's going to give so many more opportunities and really empower them to do whatever they want to do.
Great. So last year we brought Women Lead Napa Valley as part of, you know, kind of the women's leadership conversations. Right before, you know, kind of the world shut down, we were able to have that conference. And as I've studied myself with a certificate in women's leadership through Gonzaga, we talk about mentorship versus sponsorship. And mentorship is really, you know, women having other women, female mentors, and to guide those, but then also having the sponsorship side of empowering women to be in positions of leadership and sponsoring them to have those ideas and values and professional development and growth. So I'm going to actually ask everybody. We'll start with Laura. Did you have a professional mentor? And if so, how can young professionals find and foster that relationship within, you know, different perspectives, different industries?
I wouldn't say I had a specific mentor, but through my career development over the years, there were definitely individuals that I really identified with, that I really appreciated where they were at in their careers and what they were able to accomplish, and also, you know, share with me. You know, it's interesting, in the industry that I was in, and I guess still am in, you know, design, architecture, interiors, home decor, things of that nature. It's always been, you know, more women than men. So I never really, I'd say that, you know, the leading forces through my experiences have been women. it's always been a very diverse area. And I honestly, there's just a few important people to me, but more like personal acquaintances that, who I really aspire to their work ethic and what they've been able to accomplish, but no one in particular. I've been a pretty independent, independently employed for 23, 24 years. And so I'm a bit of a lone ranger.
No worries. What would you kind of say, maybe if you had, an internship or you wanted to be a mentor yourself, what should a mentee really kind of do to foster a relationship with a mentor?
I think being patient and listening and being willing to take the time and explain the process. And I feel like back in my day, we did everything at a slower pace. Slow isn't the right word. It was very complete and efficient, and we were all workaholics. But I just feel like life is so fast now, and just the expectations of getting everything done in such a short period of time and getting results and getting clicks and views, and that's definitely not my generation. But I would say take your time and first and foremost do a very thorough and quality work. And I think that just listening and having the patience to explain and to teach and move somebody forward.
Great. Michelle, I'm going to pose kind of that same question to you.
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the things that I am most grateful for about my role at the Napa Valley Vintners and the work that we do is the fact that I have been so fortunate to be surrounded by so many strong, incredible women. And the men on our team are fantastic too. But I was really blown away when I came to the NVV. I felt like I was seeing women occupy spaces and take up space in a way that I hadn't really seen before. And so, our president and CEO, Linda Reef, is an incredible example of that. I vividly remember, probably within my first year at the Vintners and being in a committee meeting, and it was a very influential committee and full of, people with their last names on wine bottles, and everyone gathered around the table, and I kind of sat back and took a second row seat, and she looked at me and just said no. Like, she pulled out the seat and said, sit at the table. And that was huge for me. And she's been an incredible role model for our whole team, but me personally, in terms of what a leader can be, which is, empathetic and strong at the same time. And then I have to mention my, fairy godmother at the NVV, who's Patsy McGoy. She was our former communications director. And she really did take the time to show me the way, right? If I wrote a press release that was riddled with errors, she walked me through, how it was wrong and helped me become a stronger writer, and really helped me see my own potential. And so I'm forever grateful to her for that. But I think when you're a mentee and you're in that position, I think it's really important to look around and look at the people who you admire and whose life you would like to emulate, whose work ethic is what you want to have in your life. It's not about just picking the most important person in the company, but it's about finding the person that you really align with and that you're going to be able to have the conversations, the uncomfortable conversations too, or the emotional conversations about how you're feeling about something. You want to find that person that you can have that deeper connection with, and that honest and real, vulnerable conversation with, because I think that's where you'll get the most value. They'll feel like they're helping you the most, and you'll grow from it.
Great. Martina or Angelina, would you guys have anything to add to that topic, the question?
I mean, I think they answered it beautifully.
Yeah.
I'd say one thing is too that you can also learn a lot of things that you want to sort of mirror in your own life from other people, but you can also learn how of people things you don't want to do. So I think there are those people in your life that come through in especially in business where you're like, I will never be a manager like that, or I would not do that to anyone that works for me. Or so I do think those little nuggets are important too, to realize in that moment when you feel uncomfortable or when someone says something to you that was not helpful in your growth, that you can approach it differently, and that you remember those moments. And when you're in that position, I know I have now working, being a manager over a lot of different people, that I take those nuggets and I'm very aware in a lot of different situations how to handle things differently than others have maybe handled them with me. So.
Yeah, I think everyone really had some really valid points on that. And, I think, it never hurts to ask, if you are seeking out a mentor, ask, if there's someone that you do actually admire, ask them. And you never know, because they may say yes. They may tell you no, or they may have someone that they think might actually be more suitable to be a mentor than you. But unless you ask, you won't know.
Yeah. And Michelle, thank you for that, that conversation that you had about taking a seat at the table, because that's so important that when we talk about, adversity, equality, diversity, that it's not just making room at the table, it's knowing that the room is already there and that we have to address it. So I really appreciate that. When it comes to, I want to hear from everybody on this one too, but what has changed for women or in general since you started your career in your prospective industries? I know, Angelina, you touched on that in terms of just, the way women are taking more of a leadership role in the wine industry, but maybe if there's a specific area or for specific leadership kind of piece, or even just how women are viewed within those industries, what has changed that you've seen? And let's start with Angelina.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've actually seen, I'm the first female to actually sit on the board of directors for my family, because it has been so male dominated, and it really just had to do with the birth alignment of being basically all men, and then my generation seems to be all women, and then the fifth generation is actually all boys right now as well. So I think we go through the skipping. It'll be interesting to see whoever has the next child, if it's going to be a boy or a girl in the fifth generation. But I think one of the unique things is being able to sit on the board of director and asking some of those hard questions. If you're looking at going into a partnership and it's owned by predominantly all men, asking the question and being like, how are they receptive if they're going to be in business with all women? I want to know, because if they don't like it, I don't personally want to go into business with someone that has an issue with being a business partner with an all female led and run company. I'm really fortunate because our team for my family is really, really diverse. It's really amazing. And some of those uncomfortable conversations have actually had to come up. And sometimes I think it takes some people by surprise, but then they're like, well, I'm not really at all shocked. And I was like, well, look, I know that country and I've experienced what I've experienced. I don't want to lump everyone into and generalize, but this is how I just want to make sure that if we're going down this avenue, we've done our due diligence. And I think that that's really, really important. And I'm starting to notice it more and more. I sit on 2 nonprofit board of directors, of which used to be predominantly all men. And now there's at least 1 or 2 females on the board. So I'm starting to see that women are starting to take a little bit more of a role, especially when it comes to children or the future. I'm noticing women are really gravitating towards that a lot more. And I think it's actually really fascinating. But I also think it's really cool at the same time because for me, you know, being going in, I fly fish. I really don't have any girlfriends that I fly fish with. It's all men. But I've actually been able to learn and meet some of the wives, and now some of the wives are actually going. So it turns into, you know, I actually am building some friendships because some of the other wives are actually interested in something that their husband's been doing their entire lives, but they really never had another counterpart or another woman to really go with. Because let's face it, I don't exactly like going on a boat with all men and then being like, I have to go to the bathroom. You know, I've got to get off the boat, go into the bushes. You know, it's a little bit more uncomfortable, but it's, you know, it's all that sort of stuff that you just don't really realize until you experience it. But when you start seeing that women are starting to take a little bit more of an initiative and a role in boards, I think it really helps balance certain things out a lot more.
That's great. Great. Let's go to Martina.
Mine's like an overarching general, again, like just because, and I'm not going to get political, but just the fact that we have a female vice president now. And so never in my lifetime did I think I would see that, and not as a child or a young person growing up did I think that was even an option. So moving forward, like I said, the last few years have just been, you know, amidst all of the chaos that we've been going through this past year, you know, the last few years have been really positive in terms of looking at the world in a different way, and the inclusion of all people, and we're all human. And I think that, you know, it's something that's just going to get better and better. And, you know, I keep bringing up my daughters, but I think really I think of them the most because they are, they're the future. And, you know, I love that they can see a woman that is running the country. You know, she's helping run the country, and now they can put themselves in that same position and go, I could do that. Could I be president someday? They ask those questions. Yes, you can. Look at that person. She's doing it. You can do it too. And it's really nice to have those wonderful examples. And there's so many now out there. And we read all those books, but you realize in history, there's been so many amazing women and so many amazing stories of women who have changed different industries and different cultures. And you know, all that information, again, I wish I would have had it when I was younger. I think it would have, you know, given me a little bit more confidence at a younger age to empower myself to do more. And, you know, now I feel like I'm just catching up to it. And, you know, with what life I have left, you know, I'm definitely like all in, and I'm like, this is great. This is amazing. So I'm just excited. I'm thrilled with where the world's going, and, you know, to have these sort of conversations and to be open and honest about it. It's a beautiful thing.
Michelle.
I loved what Martina shared, because I completely agree. I think we are now looking at things through several new lenses, but the diversity, inclusivity, opportunity, equity lens that I think everyone hopefully is now looking at things through before they make decisions is really exciting. And even though it's incredibly overdue. It's here now, and I am really excited to be a part of the work at NVV to carry those ideas and actions forward. But when I was thinking about kind of what else has changed, I think for me at least, and maybe this is a personal change, but I feel much more empowered to speak up and say, no, that's not okay, or can we look at this a different way? I think for so long, I felt personally like I had to be perfect in order to earn my seat at the table. And now I understand that I don't. I've earned the seat at the table through my experience and, my work ethic and my ideas. But I think what women are kind of bringing forward now more than ever, and it's so needed, is this idea of what is and is not sustainable, and providing input with a more, I guess, holistic perspective about how decisions and policies and actions affect people, on the spectrum, and thinking about, not just what's going to maybe make the most money or make the most splash, but how it's going to affect the workers. And, are people going to have to be spending nights and weekends getting this sort of thing done? I just think there's a sense of balance that's coming forward now. And I am here for it. And I just think it's incredible that we are recognizing that business as usual was not sustainable. It wasn't working. And now I feel like we're in a time of a reset, and hearing from more voices, more diverse groups of people, everyone having a seat at the table, I think is going to lead to a richness and a better quality of life, hopefully, and better outcomes in everything that we're doing. So sorry for the rant, but that's...
No, it's okay. Laura?
Well, actually, I really agree with Martina and Michelle. And I have a daughter who's just graduating from college. So, a lot of these issues that these young women are facing as they enter the work world it's very exciting. I mean, I do feel that there's definitely more room at the table and opportunities for my daughter than there was for me, way back in the 80s. I feel like the glass ceiling has been broken, and there is an incredible opportunity. And I do believe that in all industries, more so than others, where there is definitely more equality and respect, and which is a really good thing. So I'm very hopeful for my daughter, starting a young career, and agreeing with Martina, my goodness, I don't want to get political, but it is really exciting to have, a vice president of our country, be a woman, and seeing so many other very confident women in other very high level positions. So it's exciting times. But, I think our worst enemy is ourselves, in that one thing that really hasn't quite evolved is being the homemaker and child, being the child care, the mother. And, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of work to not only be successful and really achieve and your, professional height and expression, but it's also, you have often the responsibility of taking care of your children, and I think that's a tough act. It's a balance, and there's a lot of women that can do it all and do it well, but I think that tradition has not evolved like we have in the workplace. So I think that's going to be the, the ongoing challenge for women moving forward, is having to have a successful work life and in being successful, being in charge of your children too.
Well, and if I could just add on to that, Laura, I think it's, I think women are, I don't have children, but I think women are balancing so much, and our policies and, the systems in place need to support working women and need to support families. And those are the things that really need to change, because I think people are bending over backwards as it is. So we need more support for all women.
Well, and I think, there's kind of some stigmas, if you're working too much and you're a very successful career woman, then you must not be a good mom, trying to find that, that balance. And, but I think there's just so many opportunities now for the young people, young women, and I'm super excited for our daughter. And, it's a good time to be a woman, I think.
Love that. I want to, I know we could talk about this for hours and hours, but for final takeaways, I'm going to ask that if everybody could just share maybe 2 to 3 sentences of what they envision for, or hope for the future of women in leadership in Napa Valley, maybe in your workplaces. Just quickly kind of share those hopes and thoughts. And anybody who wants to kick us off.
Yeah,
I think, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just think we can continue to support each other and do things like this. This has been wonderful. I feel like I've learned something today from each of you. So this has been great for me. And I think this is such a dynamic place. It was like a change of pace for me, definitely moving out here. And I've learned over the years, meeting so many dynamic people, and so many people with amazing ideas, and people that are, starting new businesses, people that are following their dreams and their passions. And a lot of them are women. So I think it's important that we continue to identify all those people, to be a good network for one another, to uplift each other, empower each other. I'm excited for what's to come. We're only just beginning, but you definitely all have a seat at my table. That's for sure. You ladies are amazing. So that's my list. Thank you.
I love it. Thanks, Martina. I think for me, one of the most important things is that we are all supportive of each other, and we remove that. There's sometimes this sense of judgment. I'm almost 40. I'm not married. I'm divorced. But I always envisioned having a child. And I didn't really get that opportunity. And, I constantly get the comment, well, you can adopt, or you can have a child on your own, or you can do this and you can do this. And I think the hard part is there's that again, that stigmatism, or a little bit of that judgment. And I'm hoping, and I'm realizing it's starting to slowly go away, that people aren't like, well, why don't you have a child, or why don't you want to be this or that? And instead of lumping us into one box, I think people are starting to realize not everyone takes the same avenue and the same course. And I think that's really important. And having that support background of understanding, you may not understand everyone's story and, at all, but being supportive of the decision that person, or that female, or whatever race you might be as well, and respect and have that respect for that person, goes such a long way. It was really, I think for me, it was really, really just, it was the past few years have been difficult after the divorce, because people are like, well, aren't you dating? Or you have a family, And I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure things out. I'm not even 40 yet. Like, give me time, And for me, I'm like, I have my fur babies, right now, and they take up most of my life. If you follow me at all on social media, you'll know that one's with me 24/7. But I think as long as we support each other and we respect each other, things are going to improve dramatically. And I'm already starting to see it. And I've been experiencing it on Clubhouse, and having discussions about inclusivity of, different races, and, being a minority business owner, and how we can support one another and take that to that next level. And for me, I get goosebumps just thinking about it, because it's so amazing to watch, and watching that expansion actually happen dramatically has been really, really exhilarating to see. And then also knowing that some of your good friends are starting to succeed because of that. And they feel like they're comfortable enough to actually come out of their own shell and actually speak their voice. I think it's been so exhilarating to watch. It's powerful.
Yeah, thank you. How about Laura?
Well, I'm so impressed by all the three other women on this panel, and I actually want to sign each of you to be my daughter's mentor. But I'm in agreement with Angelina that it's all about supporting each other, and I've been here 25 years, and boy, the Napa Valley has changed so much in that period of time. And seeing more and more women in leadership roles and being more active and on boards, and it's exciting times, I think, in the Napa Valley and in the wine industry. And I'm hoping that eventually our daughter might circle home and find a place, if she's interested, in my husband's family business. But I'm pretty impressed with the women in this valley. And as Michelle has stated, the ladies at the vintner's office, oh my gosh, amazing. Yeah. So
they're powerhouses, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And
still very optimistic.
I would just add that I think, as going from, not really knowing much of anything about this industry to having more of a voice in it, I recognize that it is now my responsibility to pull the seat out from the table and invite someone to sit. And that is a privilege that I need to exercise, sharing the power that I do have with others who may not have it yet is also a responsibility I have. But I would just add that I think the women that I've come across in my life, in whether it's in Napa Valley or Sonoma County or law school or at the Vintners, they all do an incredible job of supporting one another. And so I would offer that I think the opportunity here is with our male counterparts and asking them to join us and be aware and to extend the seat at the table and to raise our voices and to make sure if someone interrupts us that they maybe they jump in and stop it before my female colleague does. And I've been incredibly fortunate, like I said, to have incredible male colleagues at the Vintners, Rex Stoltz in particular, who worked at the St. Helena Chamber of Commerce for 8 years, has done a great job of that. But to all men in the industry, we need your help. So please join us.
Yeah, I think that conversation about allyship is so important in so many different forms of diversity and inclusion. So I can't thank the four of you enough for being a part of this program. I think it was a really great conversation. It felt like the hour flew by very quickly, and that we could keep talking forever about this, but I appreciate each one of you again. For everybody else, thank you for joining us. Also, part 2 will be April 8th at 2 p.m. in Leadership and Marketing in Napa Valley with a great group of folks, Nathan Davis from Harvest Inn, Cynthia Ariosta from Pizzeria Vigne, Lindsay Gallagher from Visit Napa Valley, and Bobby Pena professor with PUC as well. So please join us for that as well. Again, thank you for joining us, and thank you to our wonderful panelists for being with us too.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.